Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Brenda Bailey Hughes, and I welcome you to Learn Plus, my LinkedIn Live monthly event to introduce you to some great thought leaders on a variety of topics that will make you better leaders, better business professionals, and just to live your life better. I see in our stream, we've got people checking in the chat. If you are in LinkedIn, you can mention where you're from. I see messy in Georgia, rainy and wet in Tennessee. Welcome aboard, raining in Ohio. And I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, and it also is raining here. So that's great. We're so glad that some of you are here. New Orleans, how's the weather there? Maybe you finally get the some good stuff going. Melbourne, having a great day or night wherever you are. Thanks, Adam. So glad that you are here. Welcome, everyone. So as you're checking in with where you're from, just so you can kind of see the diversity and the global reach of our great friends. Amir from Saudi Arabia, thank you. So glad you're here. Pennsylvania, not raining yet. It's probably on its way. And Vancouver, welcome, Nora. So glad you're here. When I was planning for today's Learn Plus, I was thinking, okay, we're going to be toward the end of January. All of us who set New Year's resolutions or started doing some business and personal planning at the beginning of the year, it's about that time when we're starting to break all those resolutions that we made. No, I hope not. But I am curious, in the chat, you can share with us how many of you did do some early year professional or business goal setting. You don't have to tell us your goals. Just let us know, did you do that process, some sort of process of goal setting? How many of you give me a yes if you were, hello from Houston? Yeah, and raining even in Los Angeles, and it never rains in LA. Glad you're here, Jill. How many of you did some sort of early annual goal setting, planning? Anybody do some of that? Yes, Shelby tried. Well, Nora had, yeah, Shelley Majors did. Okay, good. April definitely. Okay, a lot of us have set those goals. All right, I did as well. Now I want you to think, would networking help you meet those goals in any way, shape, or form? And is that part of why you're here today? When we start thinking more globally about what networking might be for us, we start to realize how it can drive so many of the goals that we have for ourselves. Yes, Shelley Major said, finding clients, growing business. So absolutely, networking is so intricately linked to yours. How about somebody whose goals seem a little less connected to, for example, I was setting goals around designing new curriculum. And at first I thought, well, I don't need clients to design curriculum. But the more networking I do, the more people I find that are designing curriculum in the space that I wanted to take mine, that have done something innovative. So yeah, here, look at this, intentional networking. Thank you, Chantel. I think that's really going to be a focus. We called it strategic networking, but intentional, absolutely. Tara gives us a 10 million% that networking is going to be helpful to her goals. Well, then let me introduce our speaker for today, because he is brilliant about this topic and such a fun presenter to learn from. His name is Professor Ernest O'Boyle. He teaches here at the Kelley School of Business, where I teach. He is the Dale M. Coleman Chair of Management in our Management and Entrepreneurship department. He's an award-winning teacher. He is published in all the journals that a good business school professor wants to be published in: Journal of Management, Journal of Applied Psych, Academy of Management Journal, Personnel Psychology. I know we've got some HR representatives with us that might read Personnel Psych. So just really well respected in his field. I found out about some of his networking work when he and I were co-teaching for a corporate executive group. And it was interesting to me that the group wanted networking to begin with, because frequently we think about networking being this thing we do to get a new job. And why would a corporation want to sponsor and pay for education for some of their best leaders, their high potential employees, just to help them get another job? And that's when I'm realizing, oh no, I've bought into the myth that networking is all about finding a new job, a new place to go. And there's so much more to it. And our leaders are definitely benefited by, all of us as professionals are benefited by great networking, strategic networking, intentional networking. So let's bring Ernest in and let me introduce you to him. And there we go.
Hello.
Hello, Ernest. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Brenda?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course.
I
Thank
was
you
just
for having me.
telling them that I loved our conversations that we had with the executive group we worked with. And was surprised, first of all, that their company wanted to pay for that, and was so delighted. I thought they were such a forward-thinking organization in many ways to embrace the idea that networking matters. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was great working with you. Hope to be able to do it again.
Yes, I think so. So hopefully you're seeing in the chat, we've got people from all over the place talking about networking. They're all sold on it. I don't think we're going to have to spend a ton of time selling them on the idea that it is important. But I do think there's this interesting piece. I heard Ernest, when we were doing that executive ed piece together, he was talking about a recruiter that he knew, that you knew, and that you said something like the recruiter won't place a candidate until the recruiter understands the health of that candidate's network. I'm curious what a healthy network looks like to you or in that recruiter's mind, and why does it matter so much that recruiter factored it into a placement?
Yeah. And he is a recruiter. He's a headhunter that primarily works with people at the director level and up. The reason why he cares so much about one strategic network, along with all the other stuff that goes with it, right? Along with the experience, along with all the accolades and the things that you need to have. He's really interested in the strategic network because, frankly, he has skin in the game. If he places somebody into a position and they just stink at it, that person gets fired after 1 quarter in the C-suite. He gets a charge back on his commission, and he's never going to be able to go to that organization again and say, no, trust me, I have a really good candidate here. So it's absolutely important to him that somebody is checking all the boxes, one of which being that they have a particularly strong or healthy strategic network. And
so I get that a recruiter would want the candidate to be successful. That makes sense. But why does network play into that success so much?
Sure.
I mean, I'm thinking the boxes should be, this is an intelligent candidate. This is a hardworking candidate. This is an ethical candidate. This is a candidate that knows the industry. Why networking?
Well, really 3 reasons. The first is, I mean, you probably heard, like, money sticks to money. Talent sticks to talent. Success sticks to success. Somebody who has a strategic network that has a lot of talented, successful professionals in it are probably themselves on an upward trajectory or currently have that degree of success and talent. So in that sense, it's an imperfect proxy for success in that sense. But I will say it's not, I don't know. I don't know many CEOs, but the ones I do know, they're not like hanging out at Denny's late night with a bunch of burnouts. I mean, they're individuals that tend to interact with a lot of other successful people. So he's paying attention to that. The other 2 reasons are he's not hunting individual contributors. He's only focused on leadership positions. And no matter how charismatic, how caring, how ethical, how lovely a leader is, if they don't have a good strategic network, which I'll define in 1 second, then they are going to struggle with what's called Cantor's, K-A-N-T-E-R, symbols of power. Strategic networks are one of 3 broad classes of networks. You got your personal network, your friends and family. You got your operational network, your direct reports. And then you have the strategic network that's composed of people at the same level as you or above, both within and outside your own organization. When we talk about what a leader does, a leader's job in many cases is to protect and promote their people. Who are they protecting them from? Who are they promoting them to? It's somebody else either in the organization or outside of that organization. So Cantor symbols of power have nothing to do with what your people think of you. They have everything to do of the influence you have outside of your job title. Can you intervene on somebody's behalf to protect them? Can you, when a new opportunity opens, do you know the people that are going to be able to pull the trigger and place somebody into that role? So those are the types of, so that's really, the one is the proxy for success. This other one is this idea that without a strategic network, we're not going to be in a very strong position to look out for our people. And then the last reason is this particular person, this particular recruiter has a really strong interest in D&I. There is what's called the broken rung problem, which is that the reason we don't see as much, we see some folks that are traditionally struggle to get into leadership positions within an organization. It's usually not when they're a senior VP trying to go C-suite. It's usually when they're a frontline or midline manager. That's when we have trouble getting them past those problems. And so that's why I call it the broken rung problem.
Okay.
We know that sponsorship is one of the best ways to get somebody over that line, up to the rungs where they can actually start climbing again. Sponsorship is not mentorship. It's not coaching. It's outward facing. It's promoting your people and promoting those individuals that you know would be successful in that role. Who do we promote these people to? Other people in our strategic network. So those are the three reasons why he puts such emphasis on those, the strategic network of somebody he's trying to place.
Okay, I'm glad you pointed that out, because actually when you started talking about the importance of the network, I almost got a little nervous that it would be a slap in the face to diversity, that this is my network, this is my little niche, and these are my people, and I'm going to make it. So I was worried that it would actually rule out opening the conversation, opening leadership roles to other people. But you're saying it can have just the opposite effect.
It can, and it can definitely cut both ways. I mean, there's a reason why when I say the old boys club, everyone pretty much knows what I'm talking about. So there can be that use of strategic networks as an exclusionary tool. I don't think that's healthy for anybody's strategic network, something I'll talk about later if we have time. This idea is everybody in your network, if they look like you, think like you, act like you, what are you getting out of that network then? There's just a bunch of clones. Yeah. So you got to kind of have the diversity of thought and have an open network. And that's not going to be something that's gained by just hanging out at the country club.
Right, right. The other thing you mentioned was that part of a strategic network is not just your direct reports, not just your family, but both people within and external to the organization. I think it'd be interesting, listeners, if you start doing some self-assessment of your own network, like check the health of your network right now. When I went up for a promotion not too long ago, I realized internally I had a great network. I knew people all over the campus, all over the university. But then I had to have these letters of recommendation written from people external to the university. And then it felt a lot slimmer to me. It was like I had not been strategic enough about building the relationships external to my own organization. I knew a lot of people, but I think, having somebody following you on LinkedIn is not somebody in your network, I don't think. As much as I love that people follow me on LinkedIn, there's more to the kind of network that I think you're describing. Yes, Ernest?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the networking mistakes. One of the classic ones is equating one's social media presence with their network, especially the strategic network. You're not collecting baseball cards. It's not like Pokemon cards. You get as many people to click that accept button for you. And, and I have to talk to my MBAs about it all the time. I have 11,000 connections. I'm so well networked. It's like, no, you don't. I mean, you may have that many people that click the accept button, but if you got fired tomorrow, who can you call and who's going to actually pick up the phone and be able to help you out with? That's your actual network, or at least your strategic network. And as Brenda was saying, this isn't just about placement by any stretch of it. Right. But if we think about what does a healthy network have, it's a garden. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's not that baseball card collection where, I connected with, Elon Musk 9 years ago, and there we go. And well, he doesn't remember you, and it's unlikely he's going to pick up that call in all likelihood. Right. So it is something about focusing in on those relationships, not in a purely transactional type way, but focusing on those relationships of people that are going to what will eventually become your own personal board of directors. And you're going to be on their personal board of directors, other people in your network. So that's one of those common networking mistakes is thinking that because I have a social media presence, I have this really strong one, really strong strategic network. And that's just not the case. That's akin to, it used to be a really bad practice. People would go to these networking functions and basically break into the coat room and put their business cards in everybody's pocket. That's not networking, that's littering. There's a very different, there's a skill to this. And sometimes people will make some early mistakes on that because that they think that that's what networking is just mass pushing your name out there when that's not what it's about.
Yeah, I want to pick up a couple of comments in our chat that I just want to point out if people missed them, because you're a chatty group, which is great. Keep talking to us. Crystal said, without networking, we have no partnerships. Without partnerships, it's pretty hard to thrive as a society. Absolutely. And Ye said, having good networks shows you're careful about the people you associate with. Yeah, that talent sticks to talent idea that you were talking about, I think, Ernest.
Yeah, if you have kids and all of a sudden your kids start hanging out with the crowd that doesn't seem like they're that great, you get really concerned because you recognize that, hey, these folks move together. The norms of this little group, this clique, is going to influence my child. Well, similar things happen at the professional level. If you're constantly interacting with other successful people, other experts in different areas, that's good for you. You're going to pick up some of that.
Yeah. And Crystal asked about the external networks. That's where I mentioned that suddenly I didn't have anyone external to my own organization. And then the thinking, Indiana University is a big place, but it still only thinks so far. And it really was missing out on some great opportunities there. Tassim, do you think leaders should have great networks or should have great networking skills? I'm not sure there's a difference, but let's play with that for a minute. You mentioned the coat room experience, people shoving cards into pockets and hiding in the coat room. I'm not necessarily confessing to this. Yes, I am. I might have gone to networking events and hid in the cloakroom, not to put cards in, but just to hide. I'm curious, listeners, how many of you really despise the activity of networking or what we've traditionally thought of as networking? When you mentioned, Ernest, that networking event and the coat room over there, I had this visceral response. I just am so uncomfortable in those environments. And I'm curious, a lot, as our learner was asking, is there a difference between the networking activity? What does it include beyond those painful experiences of we're here to network now? What are some of the other networking activity that might feel a little less icky?
Yeah. And so I always like soft transfer. I like it when somebody can actually introduce me to somebody else. And that's probably some of my own shyness that shows up in things like that. But there's a pretty recent Harvard Business Review on this. I can try to track it down. I believe it was HBR, but basically saying that networking events aren't that valuable. Networking, though, in other contexts is highly valuable. So, for example, if I go to, it's a work party, I know there's going to be a bunch of professors there or something like that. I'm the one that hides in the coat room too. And when I have to put on
there, because I'm definitely there.
I put on one of those lanyards with my name on it. It feels like I just tied an anvil around my neck. I don't enjoy that aspect of it that much. But if I'm in a situation where I'm at a party where I know that there's people here that would fall into the category of strategic network partners, right? There are people at my level, there are people at other universities, or they're higher up at IU. Well, I'm going to go into that. And if I'm feeling particularly shy that night, I might go in with a 5-2-1 rule, which is I'm going into this party. I'm going to introduce myself to 5 people. 2 of them, I'm going to send in a LinkedIn request with a personalized message afterwards. 1 of them, I'm going to try to schedule a coffee with or a 20-minute Zoom call with. And if that takes me 5 minutes or that takes me 5 hours, so be it. But I'm going in with that mentality because it's a little bit easier for somebody like me.
Yeah. I did find that helped me as well. I think to have real clear goals. I'd never heard 5-2-1. I love that. I would give myself I'm working on an interesting article. I won't leave until I've found 3 people who can add to my insight about this particular topic that I'm toying with. So same kind of idea that I've got to give myself a goal or I'm going to eat snacks and leave as quickly as possible.
Yeah, yeah. And in 521, it's there's nothing magic about that. It's
Right.
just it's some way to basically gamify the network for those of us that don't always enjoy the process of networking, which I will say is more mental than anything else. And oftentimes what you don't enjoy is actually not networking. You don't enjoy the phoniness. And this is again one of those kind of issues that can sometimes prevent people from being good networkers or building out a strong network, but it is thinking it's dirty, right?
Yeah.
I'm a straight shooter. I feel like networking requires you to put on an act and to lie to other people's, and I don't like to lie to other people. Well, great. I'm glad you don't like to lie to other people. I study psychopaths, and psychopaths love to do that. So congratulations there. You're not a psychopath. But that's not what networking is. Networking is not lying to other individuals. I'm going to keep coming back to that idea of a personal board of directors. You're recognizing that other people have tools in their toolbox that you don't have, and you have tools in your toolbox that they don't have. This is about collaboration. This is about symbiosis, not about all I want to do is extract as much value out of the network. You can see those people coming from a mile away at the events. They got the big cheesy grin on their face and they're just so thirsty that it's a huge, huge turnoff. So I don't think you need to go down that route. If you don't like that aspect of it, fine, don't do it. It's not a very effective strategy anyway. Ingratiation, these sort of this kind of phoniness is comes off. It definitely is transmittable to the person you're speaking to. So I do believe that a lot of the discomfort around networking is more not quite understanding what it is or thinking it is one of those extreme type work events where, you're almost speed dating.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This sounds painful. So Preetha is now a fan because she had mentioned it feels a little fake. I'm not sure I want to do it. But as we're redefining how we think of networking and strategic networking, why did you call it strategic networking? Why not just networking? What's that mean to you? And what are some of the characteristics of a strategically built network?
Strategically built is very similar to what you were describing. You had an idea in your head that you were rolling around. In fact, everybody that wrote down those goals, these New Year's resolutions, some of those might have a business angle to it. Write those goals down and then identify people within your network who are going to help you with that. And if you find gaps there, like this is something I really need somebody with engineering background. This is I'm excited about this topic, but I need to talk to somebody like that. That allows you to be a bit more targeted about where you're going to network and who you're going to network with. Again, it's not exclusionary. Anybody who comes up to me and wants to talk, great. But in the back of my mind, I may also have tonight. I know that there are some engineers here, and I want to get a little bit of face time with them just to introduce myself, and so that they can also learn a little bit more about me. Because again, symbiosis. I'm going to take that engineering expertise and in return, I'm going to give you HR expertise or whatever it may be. So there's the strategic angle of it.
Yeah. Chantel picked up on our conversation about how there could be a dark side to networks and in that sort of exclusive sort of way. She says we tend to promote cult followers, or I would say we tend to like people who are like ourselves. And then because we like them, we promote them. She's curious how we break that chain. Thanks for bringing that up, Chantel.
Yeah, Chantel, it's a great question. And this is something that requires deliberate effort on your part. So I do a lot of work with HR companies. And one thing I can't stand is when they say, well, our applicant pool doesn't have any diversity in it. And that's why we don't have a diverse workforce. Your job is not to just take resumes. Your job is actually to go out and hunt for people that are going to be able to contribute to this organization. When was the last time you were at an HBCU? When was the last time if you're recruiting for doc students and management, for example, when's the last time you went over to Our Ladies, which is where people with our experience, coding experience, where women are highly trained and highly ready to go into any doctoral granting institution. So it is something that does require effort. And it's one of those reasons why if your organization has a mentorship program, I strongly encourage you to make it mandatory and have people assigned based on interest. And that includes that we're going to find ways to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be sponsored, not just those folks that look, talk, and act a lot like the people that are already in the C-suite. That's where organizations homogenize. As they go up, you start to run into what Chantel was saying. and we all have a little bit of narcissism in us. I think that's idea. This person is going to be a star. And the criteria for them becoming a star is that they remind me of me at that age or at that level of experience. If we can break that cycle by saying, this person doesn't look like you. This person didn't go to the same school as you. This person has a very different background, may even have different core values than you have. Yet there is commonality here. The reason that I'm assigning you this person is because I think X, Y, Z. That can be an effective strategy because past any biases, egos win. And when I look at a protege, when one of my doc students is doing well, that's an extension of me. And I get to bask in that reflected glory. Everybody loves that. So I think, and I shouldn't say I think, the research has indicated that it is a very effective strategy in that regard to make it a more diversity of thought, diversity of demographics at the top of an organization and within your strategic network. I think you do have to have sometimes real tough conversations with yourself. Scroll through your LinkedIn profile today. Go through your strategic network. Look how many of those people are different than you. And I'm not just talking about race or gender. I'm talking about if everybody in your network is an engineer, then I don't care how big the network is. It's a pretty anemic network. I mean, you and all your engineers, I'm sure you have great parties and what have you, but it's not going to be something when you need expertise outside of the engineering domain, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Ernest, you just said it's not what I think, it's what the evidence shows. I meant to tell listeners that when I was introducing you, one of the things that is a feature of Ernest's teaching is that he talks about the hard science behind soft skills, which is a catchphrase that I just love because it means he can talk about things like networking and communication and management and leadership, soft skills, but he's not just going with what his gut tells him or what he's seen one person do and it worked. He's really bringing you in this conversation, and anytime you get a chance to listen to Ernest talk, you're getting what science is saying. You're getting what the empirical evidence tells us. So that's one of the very cool parts about working with and teaching with you, Ernest.
Well, I certainly try to stay with the evidence because you don't want my opinion. I've lived in an ivory tower for the past 20 years. I'm a little bit out of touch when it comes to just, off the cuff remarks and opinions on things. I do rely on the evidence because, well, it's if you're going to apply these things, we should know that it at least increases the probability of your success, which is always important. It's increasing the probability of success. Anybody who says they guarantee your success, well, they're either delusional or trying to sell you something. Don't buy it. This is all about
variables. Too many variables absolutely. One of our LinkedIn users just asked about icebreakers to use when meeting new folks. Stay tuned for the February LinkedIn Live with me and Carolyn Goner. That's going to be the topic, are some of the icebreakers that actually might work, and do icebreakers work and in what context. So we'll be chatting about that in February.
By the way, the best icebreaker is the one that gets you to say it. Most of this is about actually engaging in the behavior. So if the icebreaker gives you the confidence to go engage in it, do it. And I don't care what the actual stem is that goes with it. Anything that's getting you to move towards that, whether it's a 5-2-1 goal, whether it's whatever, with a set of icebreakers that you might have, if that gets you more likely to do more networking, great. It's a wonderful icebreaker.
It's a win. Interesting. Great. We talked about the different types of networks, the personal, the internal, the external, the direct reports. What about the different types of roles that people have in these systems of networking? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. And I don't want to get into the weeds of what's called structural holes theory, where these names come from, but just to kind of go through what the 4 type of roles in this theory purport is. The first is that you have connectors. Connectors are going to be like a hub and a wheel, and they'll be connected to a bunch of people around them. So it's a very tight, almost closed off network. There might not be many ways to get into it except through this connector. Then so that's an important individual to get because they're going to have a lot of sway over the various sub networks, the departments, the little silos in your organization or in your personal life. You also have energizers. Energizers are your cheerleaders. Energizers are the people, they create this contagious support, as the literature calls it. They are key to any organizational change initiative. Anything you're trying to do to change the way work is done at your organization is a change initiative, and it helps to have these energizers on board.
Yeah.
They promote you. There's a flip side to the energizer, a challenger or a skeptic, if you will. But these people are also key to organizational change. These people are also key to getting your ideas heard by the right people, because there's, especially when it's a well-known skeptic, like, oh, Boyle hates everything. If you get, but I can't believe Boyle, he's actually going along with this. I'm like the canary in the skeptical coal mine there. If I'm able to signal that I think this is a good idea and I'm a well-known skeptic, people will at least listen to Brenda's idea who was brought in. And then the last group are brokers. Brokers are really ideal positions to be in. They're in a very what's called open position, which means they're not boxed in by a bunch of the same way a connector might be. These are individuals that actually connect multiple subgroups, and they are paramount. This is something where I study bad stuff. I study evil. So Machiavellians, narcissists, psychopaths, abuse of supervision, toxic workplaces, things like that. When we look at what a Machiavellian tries to do, a Machiavellian is try to put themselves into a broker position, because then they will control all information passing through the network. Now, most people aren't doing that intentionally, thankfully. Most brokers kind of come about it naturally or are using it as part of their strategic planning to connect themselves to more groups. But those are the individuals that are actually going to carry the message outside of those people that know you, outside of your network. They reach out to their own networks to push your ideas, to get your org change initiative through.
Interesting. So learners, are you thinking about then the people in your life that serve in those various roles, and flipping it to say, when do I play those various roles? I think those are two really important questions. I noticed one of our learners earlier on said they think that it must be someone that knows you, because she said that she thinks your career is a great example of strategic networking. Ernest, do you have people in mind when you think about connectors and brokers and these different roles, and can you give some examples of what those roles might look like in an organization when you've seen it play out?
Sure. So I would put Brenda as an excellent, and it plays the energizer role very well. She's somebody that when we're in a department function meeting, when we're trying to get in management and entrepreneurship, at the table, so to speak, to get the dean's ears, it's really good to have your energizers there. Those people that are keeping not just or really motivating the other people around to continue with whatever initiative it might be. So that's a really important role here. The broker role is the reason why I have this job. I was at Iowa 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, University of Iowa, and we graduated a couple students and we placed them at Indiana. And sure enough, after about 4 years after they had graduated, they were promoted here at Indiana University, and then a job opened. And that's why I'm here. It's strictly because Sherry Walter and Eric Gonzalez-Moulet vouched for me and recommended me and said, hey, you don't really know this guy outside of his CV, but we do. And they're vouching for me. Now, that networking that I did with Eric and Sherry, that didn't feel gross. That didn't feel icky or anything like that. And when I got here, I made sure that those two individuals, I was continuing to promote them to other people, push them out into my network, try to sponsor them for things. Yeah. So it is, whoever doesn't know that part of my story, then yeah, I am a networking success case, and I don't really enjoy the networking process, even though my network has helped out tremendously. The only way I network, by the way, I talked about the goal setting, the 5-2-1s. I just know that I'm not networking for me. I take myself out of it. I'm networking for my people. I know that I need to be connected to some degree of powerful people, some degree of movers and shakers in my field, because my doc students, when they go on the market, it can be a cold experience. I want them, so I go to those conferences, I wear that lanyard, I eat that bad chicken, and I will go and promote my people as much as possible. And I can do it with a smile on my face, because at the end of the day, I know it's for them. It's not for me. And it's part of what good leaders do. So I got to do it.
Yeah. So that's a tip for when we're actually in a sponsored networking event. It seems like networking is so much more than just those events, though. So Ravish has said, how do relatively quiet or reserved ones start? I think Ernest and I both sort of identify as shy or introverted people. So I think we can bring you a wealth of personal experience here, as well as what some of the research says. But some of the other ways to you said when you networked with Sherry and Eric, it didn't feel weird. And I'm guessing that wasn't an event. It wasn't the cocktail party with the appetizers and the wine bar. That it was that networking is also about meeting interesting people within when working on a project. It's sharing content with people that you don't have to share with, but that it feels good. What are some other examples? And learners, chat in the chat for us here. What are other ways besides the structured networking events? What else do you do to build your strategic networks? And Ernest, I'm curious about your tips for networking for the shy and for everyone as well.
I do the things I have fun at. Yeah. And I do that. And that's a great way to network. So I really enjoy playing basketball. So I went down to the Y and I played some basketball, just some pickup game with some folks, had conversations afterwards. One of them turned into a pretty close friend of mine. Now, I don't necessarily have that person in my strategic network or anything like that, but that's one strategy. Volunteering, helping out someplace. If you're really passionate about a cause and there's an opportunity to do something about it, who do you think you're going to be surrounded by? It's other people who have that same passion. Now you have a common interest. Now you have the foot in the door to actually have these conversations. So no, you don't need to sign up for a bunch of networking events to be good at network, to have a healthy network. You just do the things that you enjoy doing and look around at the other people doing it too. You'll start to build a network that way.
I think that can be so much more comfortable.
Yeah.
I had a salon discussion for groups of 10 to 15 on relative marketing topics. It's fun. Yeah. And then you're also meeting these 10 to 15 amazing people with similar interests that you could all give a shout to if you were in need of something. I love that. The genuine interest. Thank you, Heidi. Having some common goals, authentic interest.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no reason to be inauthentic on this. It comes through and it's not going to help you. It's you want to be true to yourself and true to the person that you're talking to, because again, the symbiotic relationship. I'm giving as much as I'm getting, and I want this person to know accurately what I have to give. Right.
Ernest, I found it helpful for me when it is time to make a networking ask, if you will. Okay, now I actually am in it for me for a minute. I've been giving and receiving, and it's all been great. But now I need to go out and say to my network, hey, I need something. I have found it helpful. Two things have helped me with that. One is to think about how comfortable I am asking within my personal network, and then trying to make it just as non-threatening in work. So I would have no problem asking a group of friends, hey, where do you get your hair done? Who's your dermatologist? Those are questions I wouldn't feel bad asking. So then why would I feel bad if I need to ask my professional network, hey, do you know someone that could help me with this? I try to remind myself there's no difference here. And the other thing that's helped me is to try to ask as if I were asking for someone else. So you've mentioned our doctoral students. When I'm advocating for a friend or a student, and I've got a student who is just an amazing candidate, and I want them to get the internship that they're lobbying for, I'll say great things about them because it's true. And I won't hesitate to tap into my network. Those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see every once in a while I'm out there like, hey, who works at Google? I've got a student who wants to work in marketing at Google or marketing at Cardinal Health, whatever. And they're like, yeah, I'm out there. So then I just try to say, well, wait a minute, if I would be willing to do this for a student who I highly respect, why couldn't I ask for myself? Those two kind of help me get past some of the inhibitions around networking.
Those are great ideas. Yeah, I like those a lot. And you are doing it often, even when it's for yourself, there's some element of this is you're trying to be a better leader. You're going to be in charge of other individuals. And if people know that you're a good leader, they like you, they've interacted with you, they're in your network, then they're willing to vouch for you and they're willing to connect you with other people. Again, I love that aspect of the networking, the soft transfer.
Yeah.
I know you work at Google. Now you're in a different area than I necessarily am trying to move into, but do you know anybody in this area that the three of us could grab a coffee with?
Yeah.
Again, helps get over the shyness and also lets this person know, hopefully, that I'm affiliated with somebody that they have a close connection with as well.
Yeah.
That's in social networking terms, that triangle is much, much stronger than the dyad. That's easy to crack. That's easy to break. That's easy to just fade away over time. When it's the strength of the triangle is pretty darn powerful in the social network analysis literature.
Interesting. Well, I can't believe it. We are almost out of time. Our learners, let me scan here. For strategic networking specifically, simply go to socialites and extroverts. Oh yeah, Roxanne, great. I do tend to go to, if I'm going to go to one of those uncomfortable networking events, I try to go with an extrovert who's just going to be doing those introductions and not having any pain in doing so at all.
Yeah, it's nice to have that. And I'll make this super fast, which for a professor means 20 minutes. But don't lean into your traits that you think counter your willingness to network. And the big one is the one that Brenda just brought up, introversion. First off, people confuse that all the time. It's not shyness. It's not social anxiety or awkwardness or anything like that. All introversion is, if you take a real test, not anything that's going to give you a 4-digit code or tell you what color personality you are or what Game of Thrones character you are, you take a real personality test that measures introversion, extroversion, what you're going to find is that it's asking you essentially about how sensitive you are to stimuli. That's the core feature. When I go to that networking function, the lights are a little bit brighter, the music's a little louder, the conversations can be a little more taxing. It doesn't mean that I can't hold a conversation. It just means I'm probably going to get to the tipping point of that stimuli, and that's when I'll pull out. But if I use that as the excuse not to go, that's the same as when someone's like, well, I can't control my temper because I'm a Sagittarius. Really? That's what's making you the rageaholic the day you were born. If you were born a week before, you'd just be a cool cat. No. Don't let that aspect of your personality, if it is there, if you truly are on the more shy side, if you are an introvert, again, two separate things, don't use that as the excuse not to do it.
I think that's a really great point. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the esteemed Ernest O'Boyle. Ernest, thank you so much for your insights. I think people have learned a ton, and we're going to keep learning. Just like Michelangelo said, at the ripe old age of 87, I am still learning. So folks, please, as follow-up, there are a couple of things for you. Follow Ernest, follow me on LinkedIn, and see some of the follow-up that we'll post from this conversation. We were so thankful for all of the input you gave us and the great questions that you asked. Next month, and February 27th, I'll be live with Carolyn Goner, also a professor here at Indiana University at the Kelley School of Business. She and I will talk about icebreakers. So to Ernest's point, any icebreaker that helps us do the work of networking is good for us, and we'll have some examples of those. And then also the course that Tatiana Kolovu and I co-authored in the LinkedIn Learning platform called Communication Tips. And by the way, Tatiana Kolovu is my extrovert that I go with to networking events because she is brilliant at connecting people. But we have a communication course called Communication Tips. And in it, there are at least 3 videos that I think are really relevant to this. We've got how to make small talk, how to enter and exit conversations, things like that that will be helpful to you as you make your way into this networking journey. Thank you so much, everybody, and take care. We'll see you next month.